I want to thank everyone. Uh, what I'll do is I'll read our opening prayer, and then we can get started. And then after David reads his missile, we will go ahead and I wanted to discuss something that is brand new news, which I found interesting. So our prayer, I'll read it in English. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
I wanted to give David the floor, and then I'm going to just bring something to you out of interest. Yes, please, David.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to do something Halloween today. Because Halloween's coming up on Monday. But so what I found was from my favorite writer, and it's not so much the words, but it's how they're spoken. And I'm going to try to do it with my best Halloween scary voice. It's Shakespeare from Henry VI, Part 1, the very opening of the play. And if anyone wants to know if Shakespeare had an interest in the night sky, I think these three lines answer it at the very opening of one of his first pieces of writing. Hung be the heavens with black, yield day to night. Comets, importing changes in times and states, brandish your crystal tresses in the sky. Thank you, and back to you, Marty.
Oh, well, thank you, David. See, I thought you were going to read something from Macbeth.
Actually, I was looking for something from Edgar Allan Poe, but
that too.
I wanted to keep it short today.
Yeah, nevermore. Anyway, what I think is I wanted to bring to your attention, I always look at different things in science, and I sort of run a science club as well. I'm going to tell you that in Science Digest, I think it is, if you want to see the article, it's in Science Digest. The official article appeared in Nature, which is a very renowned science journal, international journal. There was a study done by 15 different doctorates from around the world. They were in different fields of it's 21 individuals. The authors are 21 individuals. And these were in the fields of geology, chemistry, carbon dating, and a whole slew of astronomy and other fields that worked with the archaeologists on this study. There was a dig in the Middle East. And I will say we have read about this place. The ruins that were uncovered show that it was a fairly good-sized city. But although there are no remains of people, the remains of their tools and other objects are there, including pottery. The city was destroyed at some point in time, but the temperatures had to reach a very high extreme because of the fact that in pottery shards, the pottery had boiled. The material was boiled. So it had to reach tremendous temperatures. And that's why this became a very important site. Okay. As it turns out, the name of the city. Oh, I should say that they worked on it with the same information from the people who worked on the meteor crater in Arizona, because of fractures that one would see in a special fracturing that one would see in quartz and other material, and also the huge celestial explosion that occurred just above Tunguska in Russia, leveling a whole area of trees and such. And anyway, to make a long story short, the site is Sodom. They think that there was a huge aerial burst from an exploding comet or asteroid, that it exploded above the surface, leveling this city. And it fits all that was mentioned at this particular site. It is right, and it's just the site is in the valley where we would have expected Lot to be, okay, biblically, which is an interesting story.
Wow.
David, did you want to say something about?
Yeah, I haven't found the article in Nature yet, but if this can be confirmed somehow, or if more evidence that could be found that would be consistent with the approach, with the idea, this would be really fascinating. And and I think Don especially would be interested in something like this. Now that is something really worth pursuing, I think. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you all, and you can read a summary of all of it on ScienceDigest.com. Okay, for those of you who are interested. Okay, Don had his hand up before Gail.
Okay. Thanks, Marty. Consistent with that, or parallel to it, there's a lot of conjecture that there are, and I've mentioned this before, solar flares occasionally bombard the Earth with terrific energy, big chunks of plasma that can result in similar catastrophe. But that leads into a question I had. If I could just ask a quick question about Genesis again. And just trying to review everything. I've only been with you guys for a year, but just trying to review everything I try to take in. Just to encapsulate Genesis, it's a story of multiple generations of Hebrews, going back to the first. And then that's overlaid with stories of great catastrophe, and internal conflict among tribes. But wrapped around the whole book is the supernatural. Everything is connected to the supernatural in Genesis. And these huge natural catastrophes, well, we might think of natural catastrophes, but there's huge catastrophes, and they are connected to the behavior of the people. So, and that goes on through Job, actually. Job, I think, was the last one in the Bible to actually have a direct communication with the supernatural in the Bible. So, my question is, what's the dividing line between levels of natural events and until it reaches the supernatural? In other words, there are storms, there are earthquakes, and they can get bigger and bigger and bigger. and all of a sudden they're big enough so they be considered to be by the hand of God. Excuse me for, I overthink everything. So where could I find some discourse on when a natural catastrophe becomes at the hand of God in the scriptures? Is there any-
Okay, I'm going to first let the rabbis have their say, and then I'll turn it over to the group.
Well, I know that's deep. I'm not sure exactly how to answer Don's question. As I understand it, the classical response in what you're saying, what's the dividing line between the natural and the supernatural, is that when something happened in the Bible and in the ancient stories, that there was no, what Maimonides would call, there was no rational explanation for it. Then the only response was to accept that this came from God. And with the corollary that God being God and humans being humans, we can't really understand. Even the most brilliant and the most scientifically oriented of our race, we cannot understand what God is doing or has planned, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the dividing line, if you will, would be whether they saw a rational explanation for. If things were growing, it meant that there was rain. It meant that there was in their agricultural society. If someone became ill, and if there were ways to respond therapeutically, someone got better, there was a rational explanation. Why someone got ill initially may have been not supernatural, but may have been part of God's plan, as opposed to if we could find an immediate cause and effect. That may get the conversation started, Don. I don't know if that gives an answer to what you're asking.
Well, Rabbi, I'm happy to go off on my own, and if I can, just get directed to some text or commentary, and then I'll go off and study and won't bother anyone.
Well, there are some. Certainly, there are books that address the concept of the supernatural. Along with myth. Myth, stories, legends, and how they're interpreted in the traditional literature. If I can find the name of a particular resource, I'll send it on to you.
Okay, great.
Rabbi Mary, and then Gail. Oh, excuse me, Rabbi Mary. Gail had her hand up before you, and then you. Okay, Gail first.
I was just going to welcome Larry back. We haven't seen him in a while.
Right.
That's right. I noticed that. So that's good, Gail. Thank you. Rabbi Mary.
Well, that's not supernatural. It's natural that he'll come back. So that's
right.
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
I don't have, I'm very cynical about the issues of supernatural and how they are described. But since we know that these things have been written after events and try to interpret them afterwards. So what came to my mind, and this is not too scientific either, is that if some explanation of an event happens and we find it across cultures, across geographical areas,
Hmm.
it's big. And it's so big that it's incorporated in the religions and the myths and so forth. So that was the thought that came to my mind. I don't know where is the borderline, maybe the size, or maybe the unusual, you know. If in Arizona we're going to have 3 years of snow, something is, although now we see changes, yeah. If we don't have scientific explanation, probably some other forces are playing there. But I just find fascinating, as I said, just seeing stories of the flood, stories of other stories in so many cultures, that makes something happen in the brain to think about, this is not just by chance. This is not what usually happens. But that's kind of a free thinking about.
But in the
Thank
Bible,
you. I'll pass to Bruce.
Don, if you wanted to go ahead, that's fine. I can be after you if you'd like.
well, thank you, Pastor Bruce. I just wanted to follow on with Rabbi Meir's.
That's why I'm saying go ahead, and then I'll go.
In the Bible, we know it's supernatural because God said he's doing this, and it's usually to punish bad behavior. But after God ceased communicating with his people, like Job was the last one that I can see, then the things that happened after that, how do you tell? God no longer says, here's what's going to happen. I know we're getting into the Exodus, and so God already tells us what he's going to do. But let's say the destruction of the first and second temples, or and everything in between, and even to go so far as the Holocaust. We know nothing from God about those things. So
I will just a quick answer, Don. And I'm going to say, you know, your notion of godliness, I think, gets into this picture. Because I don't know how you interpret in your mind when you said God said. If it's this conductor is one thing. If I think of other ways of explaining the source of life, I will see it in a different way. So you see that the point of beginning this needs to go with your perception of how things operate in the world.
well,
And if there is a force,
Excuse me. I did not want to mention this topic to spend the entire session
okay.
discussing this topic. But let Pastor Bruce have the last word on this, and then let's get back to Torah. Okay?
And what I was going to say was to Don, when he used the word texts and or commentaries, I often think that in Torah and Tanakh especially, there's a lot of examples of supernatural within Torah and Tanakh. And I would go on to say, Brit Hadasha as well. But I think that when you look at texts and what you're really asking is whether it happened as it happened and they reported it, or whether they reported it 10 to 20 to 100 years later or whatever, all these things are literally, to me, are a work of God, if you will, in the purposes, the final purposes of things. There's purposes out there with God being, if we agree that he is omniscient, omnipotent, and all those O words, that there's this greater scheme of things that turns into, some of these things are certainly natural things that happen within our sphere, and some of these things are God directing those things and we're coming up on some of them shortly. So I don't want to steal the thunder of Exodus here, but just keep your eyes open and your ears open in the text of which we are reading, first of all, and then go into Tanakh and see some of these other things and ask yourself, is this supernatural? Is this something that is just part of our world today? And maybe Mary's, timelines, might be involved in that too. So, it's all there. It's all part of our belief system. So thank you.
Okay, now I know the rabbi wants to say a word, and also David. I really would like to get back, but
okay,
anyway,
Marty,
please finish with your thoughts.
so
about what.
let me see, Marty. Let me see if I can bring it back to your original question and story. Okay, all right.
Sure.
The way that Scripture, the Tanakh, Torah, what would look at the story of Sodom, Sodom, all right, is a recognition that some calamity, catastrophe happened there. The point of the Torah and Jewish literature is we don't really have an explanation or even an exact description of what happened. It's just been handed down for generations, and we see some of the repercussions and consequences here. But Torah is concerned with what are the implications? What are the lessons? So how can we theorize of what might have happened and put that in the context of, call it supernatural if you want, or call it theology if you want, that how we put it in the context of, if God made this happen, why? And what does God want us to learn from that calamity, if you will? In a sense, it's something I was saying in a little drosh last night, because the Torah portion is Lech Lecha, is our tradition is always, let's go forward. Something happened, now we have to go forward and go forth, accepting what happened and go forward. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you. Okay, David, you had your hand up. Was that a Wendy hand or
No, this
hand?
is a David hand.
Okay.
As we're going to segue now into Exodus, as we should be doing, but I wanted to hark back to the rabbi session earlier this week, when we were talking about the very first portion of Genesis, and I wanted to show it had to do with the idea of the Jewish faith's ideas about evolution and the origin of life. And as you all know, Judaism, even Orthodox Judaism, really has no argument with the idea of organic evolution happening either very slowly or occasionally very fast. And I just wanted to show you this little bit of evidence of past life. This is a rock that I found when I was a student at Acadia. It was in it was in northern Nova Scotia. And when we opened it, we found the fossilized remains of a very nice ancestral turtle, or the head of a fish. Here's one part of it. Here's the other part of it that I wanted to share with all of you. And geologists have dated this turtle back to about 400 million years. And to me, I've kept this for all these decades as a symbol of the fact that we are into science, and we also are people of deep faith that love both science and the Jewish religion. And I just wanted to share that with you. And now, if you want to tell me where we are in Exodus, I'll be happy to start the reading.
Let's start again just with verse 11. I know we had covered this the last time, but just so we can remember a little bit about us. We are in Exodus, I believe, 2, verse 11.
Okay, here we are. And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown up, that he went out unto his brethren, and he looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren.
Okay, let's stop at that point. What does anything come to mind about this? Because everything else was taking place that we knew about Moses was he's in Egypt and he's in the house of the Pharaoh. Yeah, yes. Please, Larry.
Okay, I'm back. I went through, wow, I lost my, hold on. Okay. Okay, going through all my different commentaries, I think this portion is so significant. Hertz emphasizes it. He says, he went out of the palace into the brick fields where his brethren toiled and agonized in cruel bondage. It was loving kindness to his people that compelled him to do so. There are 10 strong things in the world, say the rabbi. Rock is strong, but iron cleaves. Fire melts iron. Water extinguishes fire. The clouds barrel off the water. The wind drives away the clouds. Man withstands the wind. Fear unmans man. Wine dispels fear. Sleep overcomes wine, and death sweeps away even sleep. But strongest of all is loving kindness, for it defies and survives death. Now Moses was filled with loving kindness, full of pity. He watched his brethren groaning beneath their beneath their burdens. What has Israel done to deserve such wretchedness? He wondered. And so the theme of loving kindness is emphasized in his actions, and that's a tenet of Judaism.
Okay. Very, very good. That's an excellent summary of things. And this whole section that we're going to be reading also.
I thought we were going to launch into Chad Gadya, you know.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah.
No, but
Just one
this,
comment.
I just want to say,
one-
have you ever played the game of rock, papers, scissors?
Sure.
And how many of you have played the game of rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock? It dovetails into what Larry was reading, and that's why. Okay. And it's important to realize that everything is interrelated. But one of the things, as Larry pointed out, I'm going to just mention the quote, love conquers all, and is outlasting. So I think, yes, Rabbi.
Rabbi Miri had her hand up first. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good.
Yes, go ahead, Rabbi.
Well, thank you. This is a quick one. I just want to, Larry, to all the qualities that you said that Moshe has. For me, when I think of Moshe, the word justice comes to mind much more than loving and kindness and so forth. So you'll hear me coming out from that point. Thank you.
Very good, Mary. Thank you. Yes, Rabbi.
Okay, so picking up also on what Larry said, the Hebrew word in Dr. Hertz's commentary for loving kindness is chesed. Right? That's what he's referring to. Some of you may know the name. This is just a sidebar. Some of you may know the name Nelson Glick of beloved memory, archaeologist. Also worked for, what was it called before it was the CIA? the special services, something or other, Donovan, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So he secretly worked for them when he was doing biblical archaeology, but he was also spying for the American government. And then later on became the president of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion as a scholar. However, I have to get back to my point. Nelson Glick's doctoral PhD, his doctoral dissertation, which was written for the University of Heidelberg in Germany, written in German, was all about the word chesed that Larry was talking about and quoting, the loving kindness. And Glick's thesis, his doctoral dissertation presented and defended the thesis that chesed is the most important characteristic, not only of Moses, but through all of biblical literature. I actually had to read, I had to demonstrate the ability to read German. So I actually had to read and translate the introduction for that dissertation in rabbinic school, because in my day everybody had to know a little bit of German because so much of the Jewish philosophers were writing in German. So as soon as you started talking about chesed and loving kindness, provoked the memory of Dr. Glick.
Fascinating. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, I'm going to follow up on what Reb Norman said. And this again is you have to think that this is how I think all over. The word Hasidut, Hasidim, and the names that we're giving to different streams of Judaism. And today, unfortunately, people said, it's those Hasidim that are demonstrating. But the Baal Shem Tov and Hasidut come as together, and we should know about Hasidut as is and not as we think it is.
Another good point. So what about so any idea how would Moses have known who his kinfolk are? Yes, Pastor Bruce.
That's what I've been thinking about as the actual question here. And I believe we don't know how long he was nursing by his regular mother, and if he would have even had any memory of that whatsoever. We don't really know that answer. There could have been continued contact with family, maybe not, but there could have been. We don't know. It doesn't say per se, I don't think anywhere. Although it says in a few more chapters, we might get a picture of a closeness with Aaron somehow. I don't know. There's a possibility in a few chapters. But it could be that, some other people just kept who knew about it, maybe reminded him about it. Who knows? I mean, we really don't know how the word. Now, there's another translation, and rabbis help me about this. Kinsman, kinfolk. I'm looking at other translations of the words that were not. That wasn't the words that were used, I don't think, in the reading. But that kinsman, kinsfolk idea is that somehow, at this particular point, it's either the Torah speaking about it and not Moses's mind, or Moses is involved in it. I'm not sure which. Do you see what I'm saying? It's either the Torah looking at it as something, or Moses really looking at it as something. And again, I don't know if we can say one way or the other, if it's Moses's mind here, or if it's the Torah just saying this here. And I need help with that, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. What did we read 2 weeks ago? Who raises Moses? And then while we think about that, yes, Rabbi, you had, and then
I apologize that I wasn't with you 2 weeks ago, but the Midrash and the commentaries are, whether they're ancient or whether it's as most recent as Cecil B. DeMille, has Rabbi Cecil B. DeMille, right, has, that his mother, when she nursed him, also taught him his heritage, told him the stories of his people, taught him Hebrew, because he had to know Hebrew to be able to communicate and understand what other people, when he did reveal himself, and this chesed attribute, he had to understand what they were saying to him. So the classical interpretation is that his mother trained him. There is a school of thought, however, that there's just a chunk of the story missing,
Sure.
that it's
Sure.
been explicated for whatever reason, and whatever. But that's the classic way of understanding it, is that his mother, and if he had relationship with the sister and with Miriam and with Aaron, we just don't know. But getting to Bruce's question, Pastor Bruce's question, yes, it says that he went out to his brothers, to his brethren.
Right.
So he certainly understood that was his connection, that he wasn't an Egyptian.
Okay. David, is it okay to give Helene the floor, because you would be next, but Helene usually has to leave in a short while.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Helene?
Thank you so much. Just listening is fascinating. But when it comes to mothering and infants, that is something I can tell you, that what you talked about, Norman, Rabbi, about the mother, today's research is amazing about what a brand new baby, an infant, learns from the mother. The brain of the infant is apparently scientifically, scientifically, the brain of the infant is the strongest brain that you will ever have in your whole life, that infants can learn 3 languages. We know this today with the computer. We understand this. And it's the mother-child relationship. The mother is the giver of the gift, nursing the baby or just holding the baby. Whatever it is, the brain is the largest brain you will have in your entire life. And this is not just what I'm saying. You can go into your science, okay? And I think
there's a reason. What you just said, I was picturing the image of Mickey Mouse, because Mickey Mouse's head is larger in proportion to his body, as opposed to Donald Duck. Okay, so but a baby's head is larger than in proportion to the rest of the baby's, than an adult. As well. What is it, teleologism or something like that? I'd have to look up the word again. But if somebody has a way of checking that, the size of a baby's head and like that in proportion to its body, but and that's how they see the world. Also, it's a very interesting observation. So anyway, yes, okay, I'll switch gears for a second. And David.
Yes, I wanted to comment on Rabbi Roman's comment about Rabbi Cecil B. DeMille, and to say that we really don't know if there was a historical Moses or not. There probably was, or somebody like him or her that handled and did the things that he or she did. But really, my point has to do with Rabbi Cecil DeMille. And I just wanted to call to your attention that what I just read, Moses grown up, he went unto his brethren, he saw the Egyptians smiting a Hebrew. That is actually filmed in the Ten Commandments. Yes. There is such a scene that's actually there.
That is very true. And I know because of time. Well, My dad knew Cecil B. DeMille. My dad was in the advertising industry and did some very large, epic the advertising campaigns for some very large movies and like that. And he enjoyed speaking with Cecil B. DeMille. He said he was a very intelligent fellow.
You know, he insisted that Cecil B. DeMille himself be the voice of God in the movie.
He can do whatever he wants.
Absolutely. Right. Right.
Well, I want to refer us back to what we read 2 weeks ago. Okay. If we would go back to Exodus 2, verse, why don't we start on verse 6? Okay. When Pharaoh's daughter comes across everything, and what happens immediately after. Just read verse 6 and 7 and 8. Okay, and if David, would you like to read that?
Yeah, I would like that. And she opened it and saw it, even the child, and behold, a boy that wept. And she had compassion on him. Excuse me. She had compassion on him. And she said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then said the sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the maiden went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages." And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him into Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son.
Okay.
She called his name Moses, and said, "Because I drew him out of the water."
Okay. So he has had some sort of exposure to the Hebrew people based on what we just read. And they may have been teaching him on the side while he is still growing up as an Egyptian.
The phrase that he grew up appears twice. Once when he grows up under his mother's care, and once when he grows up in the palace.
Right.
One is the physical growing up, and the other is the maturity, if not even the understanding, or to continue back to Larry's thing, the development of a characteristic of being lovingly kind.
Right. So I think that he had a hint. And so, as in Rabbi Cecil B's description, he's meandering one night and looking at the community that he's supposed to have come from, based on what he hears from the people who helped raise him. So you remember we had a discussion about Shifra and Pua. Right, we had, and how one rabbi, I think it was Rabbi Schwartz, I don't have the book in front of me, says that this was the first act of defiance,
civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience.
Right.
That's right. I think it was Rabbi Schwartz that said this in his book, and also. That he equates their behavior with acting out what a prophet would normally be saying to people, how to behave, okay, and helping fulfill prophecy. So it's a very interesting series of commentaries about this. So. So that's the first. We spoke about loving kindness. Okay. Oh, yes, Don.
Quick question, Marty. Did the maid go and find Moses' actual mother? That's the way I read the text. So she had to do some of the detective work to find the mother. And then
I think we learn about his father and mother later in the story.
But in that particular text, I think it's verse 8.
If somebody wants to,
I'm sorry, I didn't understand or didn't hear the question. Something about Moses' mother or father?
Moses' mother left Moses in the basket. And then
And Miriam stays to watch what happens.
okay, but then Pharaoh's daughter finds the basket
Right.
and asks her maid to go and find the mother in order to nurse. Is that how I'm reading that?
Well, no, actually Miriam comes forward and says, you know, I know a woman who would nurse the baby. Should your grace desire.
Okay,
right.
I'm reading a bad translation. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So any other comments? If not, oh, yes, please, Joanne.
I'm wondering at what age Moses may have been, and I'm wondering if it's like 12 or is it like 6 when he's first reading? When might he, what's the midrash of when he might have been given back to Pharaoh's daughter?
Well, it
I'm just
depends.
wondering about the ages, what's a midrash or something?
All I see is that he's grown up.
Yeah. Well, is that 12? You know, is that 16? Is that
No, the midrash that you're asking is when he was weaned.
Okay.
That he went back. That doesn't mean, and that's where Cecil B. DeMille comes in and says, you know, was there still interaction between him and his mother and sister and brother, or it says that the Pharaoh's daughter accepted him as his son. She adopted him.
Correct.
And that meant that he stayed in the palace. That we don't know.
Okay.
But he certainly, by the time of the next incident, when he goes out and sees the taskmaster, he has to be of great, you know, good physical size. He's not a kid anymore.
To be able to do it.
Right.
So he can't be a kid. Right. But at this point, we know he's grown up.
Right. What happened to him during the wonder years, as they say?
That's right. That's the other question. That's the other question. And there's midrash with all this too. Are those years important in the scheme of things based on what Rabbi Roman said to us already?
They're vitally important, I think. Absolutely, they're important. Every part of a person's life is important. As we know from reading a biography, there's really, you never know when something is going to happen to and from a person that will affect that person's future. So I would say everything in Moses' life is vital.
Okay. Yes. In today's, but it depends on a couple of factors. Why would it be left out of such an important book? Why would they leave that out?
Editing.
Well,
which is what some people have said. Sure. Yes, Grace.
Well, I think that's the place in which Midrashim are born, and the Aggadot are born, in the holes that we don't have. Personally, I don't think it's important. Excuse me? Yeah. Personally, I don't think it's important. Not that it's not important, the teenage, I have 3 kids, it's very important. But the issue is how we advance the story with the topics that are really important to the story. It's a way of moving the things. Okay, he was this and he rebelled and he was a teenager and he stole the car and so forth. But the point was when he encounters these two guys, when he goes to the desert. So, yeah, that's, you can write. I mean, I'm giving you an assignment for next time, write a story, a midrash about what happens from there into here. That's
right.
You are just a rabbi.
That's right. Maybe it's important that a lot has been left out. Anyway, Rabbi and then Larry.
Okay, so let me share with you. I found quickly one of the midrashim about what happens. All right, and this is only one. Pharaoh. This is after he's brought back into the palace. All right. Pharaoh's daughter used to kiss and hug Moses, loved him as if he were her own son, and would not allow him out of the royal palace. Because he was so handsome, everyone was eager to see him, and whoever saw him could not turn their eyes away from him. Pharaoh also used to kiss and hug him, and like a grandfather. And Moses used to grab Pharaoh's crown and put it on his head. The magicians of Egypt sitting there said to the Pharaoh, "We fear this one who grabs your crown and puts it on his head, that he may be the one, as we have been saying, who will take your kingdom away from you." Some of the magicians suggested that he be slain, others that he be burned alive. But Jethro, interesting how he gets in here, Jethro, who sat among them, said, "The child has yet no understanding. Why not test him? Place before him a vessel with a gold piece and a burning coal in it. If he reaches for the gold, he has understanding. You may slay him. But if he reaches for the coal, he has no understanding, and a sentence of death is not called for." So the items were brought forth at once, and Moses put forth his hand to grab the gold, but Gabriel the angel came down and shoved it off to the side, so that Moses not only seized the coal, but also put the hand with the coal into his mouth, and he burned his tongue. As a result, he became slow of speech and slow of tongue.
There you go.
So it explains several things.
But that's what they
right.
do, as Rabbi Miri would say, to fill in the blanks and bring it all together. This is the first time that we meet Jethro, who will become Moses's father-in-law and advisor, because he had pity on him earlier. And this also explains, according to the Midrash, why Moses was slow of speech.
And then there's Philo,
Yeah.
who has, if you will, a midrash as well.
Well, don't forget the angel Gabriel. I mean, that was important.
Oh, sure,
That's
right. Mm-hmm.
Now you have the the youth of Moses. I won't. It's lengthy what Philo has to say, but he just says Jewish tradition was filled with tales of Moses' beauty, brilliance, piety, splendid education, and great wisdom. There were also tales of his successes as an Egyptian general. So take your pick. Yeah, but when there's a blank space of time or a blank space to make us think a little bit, that's an important. And maybe this is one reason why there's such a gap and no explanation as to what's going on. Yeah, and Christians would have the same story with the youth of Jesus. A big gap from being born and his immediate first years, and then there's a gap, and the rest is Christian midrash until he starts coming about as we would call rabbi. Okay, yes, Larry.
We're discussing the importance of influencing a developing mind, the child. Well, there's a profound example in the Southwest with Native Americans, how the Bureau of Indian Affairs, in their wisdom, wanted to beat the Indian culture, language out of the youngsters, took them away from their families,
Yes.
cut their hair, really forbid them to speak their language, learn their cultures, and devastated generations. And somehow they're able to survive. But this is an example of how powerful, and it could also could be cruel.
It can be, yes. As a matter of fact, I don't know if how many people are familiar with the sculptor Alan Hauser.
Yeah.
Okay, his Indian name was Jesus.
Oh,
But it's not Jesus as you would imagine it in Spanish writing, as if from Indian writing. But he experienced that, but he came about and became one of the preeminent sculptors, Southwest sculptors, and also of the world. His sculptures were at the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics. And they had the streets lined with his huge statues. It was very interesting, very interesting. And he helped found a school of art that's in Santa Fe. It's still there, and it is. It's very. It has a fascinating life. Sue and I know his children. We met them at a. It was very interesting. We were having dinner at the Orr House. Okay, and we're eating, and then out of the corner of my eye, this very elderly couple comes in with their children. Now this is their children's middle age, and I look over and that's Alan Hauser. And we introduced ourselves, and then we got into discussion, and the two families, we became friends for a very, very long period of time to this day. So it's a very interesting story. And it's totally different. That experience was horrendous. And you can say 400 years here is a horrendous period of time that was developing into this analogous situation of horror that the Israelites were now experiencing. So in any case, we come across and by the way, that if you think about your own personal experiences, the more you read, the more you study different things, the more people you will meet. And because, as Louis Pasteur put it, it doesn't only pertain to science. Chance favors the prepared mind. Okay. And David knows what I was talking about. But
Absolutely.
But it's something that is a very strong statement. So thank you, Larry, for opening a little window for us in two ways. So any other comments about what we have been talking about Moses? Well, let's go into read on a bit. Is there, Gail, did you want to do a little?
Yes,
reading?
because I've kind of gotten hung up on this next
Sure.
verse.
After all we're saying.
Yeah, okay, so verse 12. And I read
So
this.
just read the verse.
Okay.
That's good.
And he turned this way and that way and saw that there was no man. And he struck the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. So I've got this picture of him standing there with this guy, and he's looking all over. Is there anybody around that's going to see me do this? You know, the guilt thing. And of course, then he hides the body. I just find this very, very interesting. I'd like to hear other people comment on it.
Okay, do you want to read the, okay. Any,
Why is it strange to you, Gail?
Well, it's not strange, but it's just, it tells he really was feeling guilt before he hit this. I mean, he's looking around, I'm gonna hit this guy and I want to make sure no one sees me do it. And then he hides the body, that he knew it was wrong. He knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
And the fact that he actually killed him and hides the body. I mean, it's a very passionate phrase in my mind. I mean, you can visualize this.
Did he look, did he look all around to see if anyone was watching him? Or did he look all around to see if there was someone else who was going to?
No, he said he turned
doesn't
this
say.
way and that way and saw that there was no man, meaning
Well, no one else was there.
No one else was going to see him do this.
Well, but no, again, but I question, is it no one else was going
No.
to see him do it? Or
No.
no one else who was going to step forward
No,
to protect the Israelite?
no, I think you're fishing there.
Not me, it's from hundreds and hundreds of years ago,
Okay.
but okay.
No, that's the way it struck me, is that, and I find it,
it
interesting.
is very, after we read about how such a kind person, loving kindness and everything else.
Mhm.
boom.
Exactly. Exactly.
Don had his hand up and
That's
then
why I
Larry.
said justice. Justice
Yeah.
is something that comes across. I mean,
Yes.
the reason it wasn't that he loved his brother, in my mind, but he said it's not fair, it's not right. So looking for the issue that should be right. I think that's more precise on it.
Okay, very good. Don and then Larry.
I also found it very disturbing because Moses had a choice. He had a conscious choice. And you can't help but relate it back to Cain and Abel. But Cain seemed much more impulsive, and it was a knee-jerk reaction that he killed his brother. But in this case, there's a pause to consider, what am I going to do? And then he went ahead and killed the man. I just found it really disturbing.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Larry, and then Suzanne.
This was before the 10 Commandments, before say, thou shalt not kill. Maybe that's one reason we needed the 10 Commandments.
No, I understand that, Larry, but he obviously knew it was wrong. He wouldn't have hid the body. Again, that's just exacerbates the whole thing. And I'm not saying he's bad or it's good or it's bad or indifferent. It's just interesting.
Okay, Suzanne, and
There is
then
one
Rabbi
Martin,
Norman.
there is a
Excuse me,
word-
Mary, just a second.
There is a word in Hebrew that's called vayera, and we translate it and it's so. But if you don't put the vowels, it can be that he was fearful. So that shows something a little different, Gail. He was fearful of what? That he's going to be, or I don't know, but if you put the word fearful, see what you can get into that sentence.
He was afraid of being caught.
Okay. So Rabbi Norman and then Suzanne.
Go Suzanne, then I'll come back.
Okay, Suzanne.
Okay, my comment's not a serious one. It's just that it says no man. It doesn't say no man or woman. So I'm wondering if there are any women around that happen.
Right.
Well, we find out.
And that was how the men knew the next day that.
Okay,
I'm just saying.
Right.
okay.
Yeah, normally it would say ki ein echad, not that there was no one there, rather than ki ein ish, that there was no man there. You're right. I'm still arguing, smilingly, I'm arguing with Gail. As I quote from the official conservative movement's commentary in
Wow.
Eitz Chaim, okay? seeing no one about, not because Moses wanted to act furtively, but to indicate that because there was no one to administer justice, he had to take the law into his own hands.
Right.
Right. This is what
Right.
Rabbi Mary
That
was
was
getting
my
after.
thought.
We may,
Yeah.
there
Come on,
are
guys.
those
What are you
who
doing?
see the
Yeah.
story in a different light. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, don't criticize Moses.
that's
No,
right.
it's not, don't criticize Moses. It's trying to understand Moses's actions here. Okay. And the let's explore it and the conflict. Okay, here he's the privileged character. He's the prince of Egypt. Grew up in the and he witnesses something that, at least in his mind, was criminal and was wrong.
Okay, but
Okay.
he hid the body.
And he looked around, and there's no ish there. There's no one with official title to step in and reprimand this taskmaster for doing what he did. Therefore, he takes it into his, he acts on his own.
But then
There are those who would see it, and play it through using the Hebrew and whatever, and play it through that way, as opposed to this is a real act that shows his loyalty to the Israelites.
So why did he hide the body? I mean, there's that. I'm sorry.
Because if you're carrying it on, because as he goes on a little bit further, as the text goes on a little bit further, he realizes that there were witnesses, and there are people among the Israelites who are going to talk about it, and what's going to happen.
You make a really good defense lawyer.
No,
well,
thanks.
this is a trial. We are
Right.
witnessing an act, and there has to be a trial, and we are participating in that in this discussion. We are the lawyers, and that's how I was when I read this. I said, "Oh, I've read books, by other authors, a lot of novels and like that." And this is now a legal debate that's coming into play here. So what happens with he finds them verse 13. Okay. Let's go to verse 13. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you're going to make me read more of this, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And he went out on the second day, and here were two Hebrew men fighting. And he said to the one who was in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" And he said, "Who made you a commander and judge over us? Are you saying you'd kill me the way you killed the Egyptian?" And Moses was afraid and said, "The thing is known for sure."
Okay.
Okay.
So now what is what's going on here? Moses has to know something about morality, right? It's not just loving kindness and justice.
That's
And how do you deal with this?
Well, the real question is, they're asking him a really good question. Who made you, judge and jury? Good question.
It is. Can we answer that in any way? Or not? When you say something or do something that's going to hurt another person.
I think Larry had his hand up there. He had
Oh,
some-
Larry, I'm sorry.
I'm looking at Fox's translation. He said, "Who made you prince and judge over us?" Now, that implies they know his history, background. Yeah, and
That's
who
a
he
good point.
is.
That changes the interpretations a little bit. That's right.
So the other interesting thing is that Moses doesn't come back with an explanation to these two guys either. He doesn't say, "Well, I was trying to defend blah, blah, blah." And he doesn't try to excuse himself.
No, then the matter is known. Okay, in my in the Plow translation, it's a fact. There's an exclamation point at the end of that little phrase. So now, just as an aside, there is there's a lot of debate by the rabbis. Rabbi Plow points out the text does not reveal whether Moses killed the man deliberately or whether he beat him so severely that he died. The latter is suggested by the use of the same Hebrew word for beat and struck. Macher v'yach.
Vayak is the same root.
Okay. The rabbis surmised that it was this manslaughter which kept Moses from entering the promised land. Fast forwarding. Again, Midrash.
He's a hothead.
Yes.
Well,
Or
you know
can
what?
be.
The word, Marty, what comes to my mind is you said makeh and vayach. That's what it does to the sela, to the stool, to the rock. And most of the
I was just going to
explanations-
lead up to, yes, please.
Right, and he uses the same word, vayach, the rock, and now vayach, the Egyptian or the Hebrew. Now, another point that I'm looking at now is the word ish. We spoke about the word ish a lot in Genesis, and we said that it might be an angel, a malach. You know, it's the three anashim that came to Abraham, the ish that Yosef meets, and so forth. And here we said, and he didn't see ish. And then in another sentence, he says, who put you to be an ish? So it's with the words we have to, what Suzanne said, it's not Isha, it's not Ish. Suzanne, don't worry about it. Nashim is just those that are midwives, that's about it. But for me, because I do follow on the words, that's an interesting point, that Ish means someone important, because it says Ish and then this and this, Husamcha. And by the way, the word, that sentence is used in modern Hebrew as well. When I say to you, Marty, you should go out, let's leave. And you'll say, Misamcha. Well, you'll say different because I'm a woman, but Misamcha, who gave you the authority to do that? Anyway.
Good point. Yes, Rabbi. Okay, Rabbi, and then Don.
Yeah, as long as Rabbi Miri is bringing up the connection to, and as you did, Marty, with makeh, it's the same verb that the taskmaster was hitting or smiting the Israelite. So he's returning action with the same action. And then makeh in the story of the Egyptians also becomes the plague. They're the esamakot, the 10 plagues.
Yeah.
So the literary connection of all these words is very important.
Very good point.
Makat chorot, yeah.
Very good points. Yes, Don.
I think there's some parallel here with modern camera phones and body cams, because it's about witnesses. I mean, obviously God witnessed Moses killing the Egyptian, but now it's a big shock. Some other people witnessed it. And so now there's this complicated situation where, what's Moses going to do? What are the witnesses going to do? Now we have different stories. But I really think it's more about witnesses than anything else.
But
Okay.
don't you think that if we say that everything is the hands of God, that God sent him to do these things? Of course, God knew what he's doing, but maybe it was a command of God to Moshe. Maybe, on the other hand, it moves the story forward.
Yeah, Rabbi Mary, I wasn't arguing with that. I was just pointing out that I think that the presence of witnesses, in addition to God as a witness, is what makes this scene so dramatic. You know, Moses could have just dealt with God and God dealt with Moses, but it's a lot more to it once people are involved. Anyway, that was my take on it.
Mike Musman would have a field day with this discussion. And any other comments before we move on? Because so if somebody would like to.
Joanne has a hand, Marty.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
I'm kind of going back to the very beginning of Moses being weaned, being taught by his mother, maybe kindness, compassion, etc. Could that have been something that came from him all of a sudden as a grown person, that what was happening, and it was one of his kinspeople, was wrong? I'm not certain we really talked about that. We other things, but not that it was just plain wrong what was going on.
Interesting. Grace? Grace?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you. I had to unmute. What I'm thinking and what I'm hearing and looking at and wondering is, okay, so he has some upbringing in the Israelite Hebrew communities, and women talk, and they're very loving and protecting over their children. And then he's introduced into, a little bit later, he goes and becomes part of the Pharaoh's culture, right? There's that conflict right there. But what I'm really, as Rabbi Miri has mentioned, he's a man of justice. So he's not sure. At this point, I think he's confused. He's afraid because he cannot distinguish his own personal ownership as to what tribe he really belongs to. That's how I'm seeing it.
Okay, good point.
He just, he's like, oh my, so he runs off to Midian. But, he's like, oh no, I've done wrong here, I've done wrong there. What did I do? Why did I do this? He's questioning in his own self-motivations, I suspect.
Right.
This is a, I want to ask a question. Okay, and nobody has to answer in detail, but think about a time in your past when you too might have been leading, you're all very good people, very compassionate people, but think about a time you lost control, you yelled at your kids, or you yelled at someone else for something that really got you upset. Okay, or you took action in a way that to seek justice on your on your own. Okay, think about those situations, and so my personal. I have two thoughts about this. One is that self-control is very important. Every time Moses, that we will learn in the future, sometime next year, at this rate, that he can lose control of his emotions and strike out. Okay. So that's one thing to think about. But most of the time he's in control. Women, that she's in control. Okay. But sometimes we emphasize those moments of poor control more than what good a person does. So if you're the recipient of one of those events,
And God lose control.
we know that can happen with the flood.
What
The
about
flood
if you
story.
bring it up closer to us? The Holocaust, 6 million.
Yes.
Can God lose control if you look at that?
I don't know. That's a good question. Yes, Gail.
I see, this is what caught me on this whole thing, is that it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction, because he looked around before he hit the guy or killed him or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah. But,
See,
but
that's if it had just been a knee-jerk reflex, I'd say, well, that's one thing, but that wasn't what happened here.
I know, I realize that, but there are times that we lose our control.
Well, I understand that, but Moses didn't
Yeah.
lose control. He looked around before he did it. Now that he was thinking before he did it.
Okay.
And I think that's the catch for me.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. But do we hold it against him forever that he lost control or he was doing thinking about it?
It's just a fact. I mean, it is what it is.
Okay. So what
If
I'm
you're
getting
following-
after
If you're
is,
following the thought that that's one of the reasons why he's not allowed into the promised land,
well,
then
this
yes,
is,
then
rabbinic
God-
drash, yes.
then God
there's-
and the history do hold it against him.
That's right. So we have that, but God holds it against him. But when we speak the name of Moses, what comes to, this does not come up in our immediate thoughts. It's all the rest of the things that he does that are good.
Well, Marty, I love Moshe. I just love him because he's so human. If I had to do what he did with these people, I would have lost control long time ago. They were
right.
a pain in the, what?
I would agree with you 100%.
They complain, So he's the leader of a bunch of whatever, and he has to lead them. So, I understand when he loses control. I really do. He is so human. He is human.
It is human
exactly.
to do that. That's very correct.
This is why this particular section is interesting and important to me, because it does make him more real and more human. He's not some god or saint.
Exactly.
So I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, look, it's a mixed bag. He's not perfection.
Yes. Okay. Rabbi, then Don.
Yeah, Marty, I just want to respond to what you had said, that mainstream Jewish tradition does include this as a positive example of Moses's character. Okay, that he stood up for the Hebrew. Okay, that he wasn't ambivalent. He took action. He looked around. There was no one else to do it. It's on my shoulders. I'm going to step in and protect this weakened Israelite. And we see that several times in his history. So that when we talk, you asked about when we think of Moses, we think of the lawgiver, we think of the teacher, some people say the general, whatever it might be. Mainstream tradition includes protector of the weak when they talk about Moses.
And that's what I was leading up to.
Yeah.
Because it's how we put it in how our own experiences what we see on TV, what we see in the movies, what we read in books, and what we are taught by our parents and teachers and all that, the external sources, that we can become too judgmental. Okay, and we have to be careful and try to figure out all of the potential motivations rather than saying this act resulted in the death of someone. We have to take more into account. Don, you, and then back to Gail.
Yeah, I really appreciate sticking with this discussion, because the more I think about it, the more I think it's necessary. This incident is necessary foreshadowing, because later on Moses is going to come down and smash the first tablets at the foot of Mount Sinai, and then he's going to get his brother Aaron to murder 4,000 of his own kinsmen. And without this incident, there's little precedent for that in this character. So I think
what I want you to do is to think of the word, well, it may be premature to even bring this into the story, but he has when he sees that he has to take immediate action or the Israelite will be killed, it says here, judge and jury. Yes, he's made a decision and he has to step in to save a life. If it means so, do the means justify? This is another topic. Do the means justify the end, or the end justify the means in this situation? How are we looking at it?
You know, Marky, in this case, which I always found interesting, is that they call one of us, one of the Jews or one of the Hebrew, he calls the Rasha, the bad guy, the wicked. We use that word in Pesach. One of the four brothers is the Rasha. And how does he know that he started? How does he know that he is the bad guy? So that's an interesting point to figure out. Why is he judging them? And they are fearful that he's going to do what he did to the Egyptian and the Hebrew. Moshe doesn't say, I'm going to kill this, I'm not going to. It's difficult for me to understand how he decides. And aside, he is a judge of these two people who fight. And his brother later on, I mean, in a Talmud and Midrash, there is a Midrash that says that Aaron, if he would have seen these two guys, he would have gone to one and said, you know, your brother really is very sorry that he started with you.
Right.
And then he'll go to the other and will say the same thing. So the one will shake hands and that's over. Moshe doesn't do that. But Moshe, and again, they are fearful. He didn't tell them, I'm going to kill you.
Okay.
They came to the conclusion based on what they saw. And they saw it. And someone saw, as Don has said before, witnesses, they were witnesses, otherwise they wouldn't know.
And Don also brings something, it made me think of two things. One, what is the family that Moses is from? What tribe? Which one?
Levites.
The Levites. Very good.
Yeah.
Go back to the story of Dinah. Okay. This is, so he exhibits some sort of trait as well. What happens? What does the Levi do in the story of Dinah? Doesn't he participate in the slaughter of the people of Shechem, the tribe of Shechem? So this could be a hint of a familial trait that we're going to see come up periodically from here on out throughout the rest of Torah. The spontaneous action, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Yes, Rabbi.
I was going to say, I can't necessarily accept that unless you put it in the context of different editors or different authors, because the Levites wind up being very, receiving a lot of favors. Okay. And, and then even the subset of the Levites become the Kohanim.
Mm-hmm.
So if the tradition was recognizing this pattern of, quick violent response or whatever it was to an action, I'm not sure that they would have also classified the Levites as God's, the being so much closer to God and performing the avodah, returning the divine service. So again, it might reflect different authors who, and there's Ellis Rifkin is a historian who writes that way and talks about some of the specific characteristics that seem to be handed down, especially for the Levites and the Aaronites and things like that.
Okay. Yes, Rabbi Mary, I think.
Gail first.
Oh, yes, Gail.
Gail.
Was Phineas the one that put this? Wasn't he a Levite?
Pinchas, yeah, sure.
Yep.
That was a bit violent.
Yeah.
But there's something that I wanted to get towards. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, I just want to point out, each one of those important guys, important people in our tradition are Avraham Avinu, is our father. And with Moshe, we said Moshe Rabbeinu, which is a teacher. So I think that we should bear that in mind when we are looking at what he does, how that came about that we'll call him Rabbeinu.
And I'm going to lead up to that because this is a teaching moment. Okay, how do you, if you were going to look at people in whether it's in government, and I don't mean taking political sides, but all people who are in a position of leadership, a teacher, a principal, your parents, okay? Don't they sometimes have to do something on the spur of the moment? They have to take some sort of action, even though they may be kind and generous and talk a bunch and have great platitudes in Congress and all this stuff. But this is also a trait of the people we think of as leaders.
But that also comes from experience. It comes from the parents of the teachers, and so the parents have experienced it in the past, so they react based on their past experience. They're able to do that.
That's
And
right.
that's a way to teach the young person. What they say, experience is the best teacher, as so they say. And so
Okay.
that's how
That's a good
younger
point.
They say to the kids, this is going to teach you.
Okay, they
It's a
do, but
reason
in,
to
in
beat
choosing
them up.
our leaders and this whole, just think outside the box. It's not just the United States, it's all world leaders that have ever come on the scene. Okay, that there are certain things they've said or done that aren't too great. Okay, and yet we still we say overall they were a very good leader. And so this is another factor that may go into the equation as to why Moses is going to be selected as a leader. He had and part of it is overcoming this weakness, but at the same time, how it fits into the overall story is that most of the time it's purposeful in some way, either teaching us, saving someone else, making a strong point. But I think we can think of this as another characteristic of true leadership. Sometimes it can't be well thought out. It has to be a brash action. Yes. Yes, Don.
I can't read the Tanakh. If the Tanakh is not for the faint of heart, because all the great figures throughout the Bible were warlords. Everyone from Abraham,
That's
to
another, sure.
David, Solomon, they were all into bloody battles. So I guess I can't be shocked by what Moses did.
Okay, that's another good point.
Had to make decisions. I mean, the rest of the world was just as murderous. So they had to do what they had to do.
But it's just an interesting observation. That's all I can say. Yes, Joanne.
Well, I keep thinking, who did the greater harm? In other words, the Egyptian person who's in charge, who's used to beating people up and killing them, or Moses who came along and saw this happening, excuse me, Moses who came along and saw this happening, and he kills this Egyptian person. Who does the greater harm here? What are we to learn from this harm that's happened? Maybe how to treat others, how to think about other people.
And that's a very important point here, because I was going to ask a question. Depending on which side of the coin we are on. If you are an Egyptian at this time, what the Egyptian taskmasters do and what this particular Egyptian is doing in this that Moses observes is one way. It's okay. These are slaves. They're nobody. Okay. Looking at it from the side of the slave or humanity or Moses, okay, from that side, this was a very evil thing to do to anyone, not just this situation. Moses, he's seen what it says. Moses has also seen how the people were treated. So think of all kinds of events that we have, and again, I don't want to open up discussions, specific discussions, but in your own mind, just think of events Just think of events that you have seen or personally witnessed where there has to be a higher order of humanity. Okay, and then I think you start to get an overall feeling. Yeah, this is, you can justify this. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact source. It's Elie Wiesel. It's Elie Wiesel's teaching. I don't remember if I read it or if I actually was from one of the 3 times that I sat in a class in an audience with him teaching, where this just came to me, as Marty, as you were speaking, of that Elie Wiesel put this particular interaction in the context of Holocaust and post-Holocaust, okay, of the taskmaster saying, well, what are you talking about? I'm just following orders.
Right.
These, these right. Israelites, these are slaves, these are nothing, these, they're less than human. Okay. And that Moses, the looking, where it says that he looked, left and right, he looked all around, that's a description of he's really thinking, what do I do? And then Wiesel says, and he said, and because it says there's no other ish around, that Wiesel then turns it into the famous quote from Pirkei Avot, in a place where there is no ish, you must stand up to be that ish. Okay, in a place where there's no other human being, no other person who takes responsibility, you must take on that task. Okay, and even if it means that you will be punished or whatever, but that is your role as a human being, as an ish. And it just, I just remembered it. I don't, again, whether it was written or whether I heard it in a class, but it just relates to this perfectly.
Okay. There are many examples. This is a very strong example. Samuel Gompers steps up and influences a whole bunch of people. Eleanor Roosevelt does.
Emma Goldman.
And I mean, we had a Supreme Court justice with an ESS, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay, I mean, there are certain situations in life where we have to. That's why this is a very important reading here. There are certain experiences that we all go through where we have to speak out, we have to do something, and the rabbi said it very well. So I just wanted to say that this is a very, that's why we're spending so much time trying to tease some of these other ideas out of this. Yes, please, Rabbi Mary.
If I understood, no, it's not Suzanne, it's Gary. I forgot her name.
Joanne, yeah.
Yeah, Joanne, I'm sorry. Joanne said, who is suffering more, or who, am I right, or who loses more?
Yes, I was Joanne.
Yeah, who's doing
right? So if I put together what Rabbi said and what you said, if I put together the issue of taking a risk, that's what we need. I mean, you don't stand aside, even if you know that something really horrible is going to happen. This is a very difficult situation. Do you take the risk to do it because it's the right thing to do, even though I'm going to suffer? And he suffers. He takes the risk and then he has to run away. So I'm just collecting characteristics of this type of leader, or Moshe, is justic, taking care of the weak, and being a mensch, and taking the risk. But one thing, when we say the word leader, I remember working with a student on a bar mitzvah, or bat mitzvah it was, And she wanted to do something about the leadership of someone. And I asked her, you know, what a leader must have to become a leader. And in my mind, there was something that usually we don't think about, but you are not a leader if you don't have followers. So, you know, you can, who are you going to lead? But some people need to go behind it. And here again, we're going to see the life of Moshe, how difficult it is for him to find followers. But the issue of taking risks with Moshe, I think it's a very powerful point for me.
Okay, good, very good points. Very good points, everyone. Yes, Michael.
Let me see if I could bring this, based on the discussion, if I can bring it up to today, based on what Rabbi Miri said. And as far as the Jews are concerned, we, you know, you have to have followers to really recognize if a leader has to have, you know, followers. And to the Jews today, is there a leader of the Jews today here in the United States? I'm going to bring this to the United States because I see things happening, and there's no followers of Jews to talk against the things that are happening, and I'm really a little bit held back to talk about it because there may be some repercussions. But I wish I could, but I'm not going to do that. But it's just you know, I don't see it today.
Okay, well, let's find out if there are some examples that people can think of. Yeah, yes, please. David had his hands up, but he's muted.
Yes,
there you go.
He's unmuted. I don't think there is one leader. I think there are lots of leaders, and I can name two of them at this study session. And Rabbi Roman and Rabbi Miri are our leaders. And I think that they're not leading every Jewish person in the world, but they certainly are helping to lead the people at our temple. And I think, to me, that's just as important.
Well, I'm thinking about the answer to that. I'm talking about the Jewish community, and the entire community here in the United States, not just here. I certainly recognize that Rabbi Miri and Rabbi Roman are certainly, and I've mentioned to Rabbi Roman that I believe I consider him a community leader. I think I've said that to Rabbi Roman. They are community leaders. But I'm talking about the entire Jewish community. And I think that if you look at the, David, if you look at, let's look at the Black community in this country. In the country as a whole, a lot of people. When one thing happens to a Black person, the entire Black community responds in a big way, in a very, very big way. I don't see, if something is said against the Jews, and I've said this before, for example, Louis Farrakhan had mentioned that Adolf Hitler was a great man. And that is to me, that's a tremendous anti-Semitic statement, as big as you can get. And that's, I didn't see any uprising against that, nothing.
I think, Michael, there's some hands up that to answer your question, Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, I mean, and Michael and I have had some conversations about this, and I hopefully we'll have more. I think what he's referring to is that where are the characters like an Abraham Joshua Heschel, or a Abba Hillel Silver, who could actually had but going back to what Rabbi Miri was saying, who had the following, okay? We are absolutely, and it's not necessarily a bad thing that we are, it's not that we're disconnected, it's that we have so many different impressions and understandings and interpretations, whether it's in a formal denominational sense or different communities. You know, Michael said about where the Black community stands up and responds. But again, but it's not with one. It may be a fairly close. It's not totally a unanimous voice. There are certainly segments of the Black community that disagree with each other, but there's not the one individual. The message may be fairly strong and agreed upon, but it's not the one individual. You can't say, well, okay, James Clyburn or whomever speaks on behalf of the Black community, nor is there the one voice that speaks on behalf of the American Jewish community. But I believe there are many voices and organizations that are speaking and are saying, perhaps in different nuance, but they're saying the same thing. If you use anti-Semitism as an example or anti-Zionism as an example, there are lots of groups within the Jewish community that are all responding. They are saying the same things, but it's not one strong individual person's voice. It's fairly unanimous, but it's not one person's voice. So that gets into the question of, you know, who or what is the whether it's one person or whether it's one particular organization that speaks on behalf of and that leads the American Jewish community.
Good, interesting, very good points. Yes, Larry.
Okay, in America, there is no chief rabbi.
Right.
Other places, there is such a thing.
But only in those countries where there's also a chief, you know, a head minister of such and such a church or something like that, where there's a specific state religion. Right.
Yeah, we also mentioned contemporary about followers. There's social media where people might have thousands of followers, and that's another whole thing. But in the US, as far as responding to certain acts, we have the ADL, anti-defense, what is it? Anti-defense league.
Anti-defamation league.
Defamation, I'm sorry.
That's right.
And in our temple of social action, I just volunteered to study and be chair of a anti-hate groups, and I'm going to start
very good
following what's going on and see ways that we can respond, whether sign a petition, write a letter to Congress. So we can do more than just complain.
Good point also. Yes, Don.
Yeah, with regard to Jews in the United States, I mean, you don't have to look at the Knesset, you know, we can't do any better than that. You know, there's an old expression about trying to organize goldfish. You just can't do it. And with regard to Michael's comment about blacks, I mean, I'm just thinking back to Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad and Martin Luther King all at the same time. You know, they all had different followings. You know, it's anyone who served in the military knows that the only way to really get one-sided is you have to be programmed to dehumanize the other side. And you know, I've been through that.
Okay. I want to get some other people in, Don, before we have to end our session. So Suzanne.
I have to agree with Michael. It doesn't seem like there's much response to things that I hear that are anti-Semitic, particularly from the women in Congress, the Quad, I think that's what they call them.
Quad.
Yeah, they say horrible, horrible things. Yeah, I just don't think there's enough of a response. And yeah, I'm happy to hear that Larry's become a part of a group that's going to be taking at least some vocal action. So I think that's a good thing. But I think a lot more needs to be done.
Agree. This comes up a lot with different groups. Today, I think it's harder to find one person. I mean, you have the Lauder family with their commitments with the World Jewish Congress and like that, and you've had others. I forget the name of the family with Seagrams. Bronfman. That family has been very instrumental in doing things. But you have other groups. That I don't know what it takes for groups to have, to develop the leadership, because there are other people who don't have the same way of looking at things. So there's another Jewish group that forms, and has another leader that looks at the world in another way.
Right.
Okay, Michael, I know I just wanted to.
Just one final point, and I'm not going to say anything, but
okay.
But this is something for everybody at this group to think about. If a prominent Jewish leader, whoever it is in this country, whoever that might be, let's say Joseph Lieberman, okay, because a lot of people in this room know who he is, and he's a Jew. And if he said publicly, James Earl Ray was a great man, I want you just to think what would happen to the Jewish community in this country based on the actions and the behaviors of the Black community in the recent past. Just think about that. That's the point that I'm trying to drive into this group here, just to think about. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you, Michael. Yes,
Marty, just one word. I'll do it quickly. This is not a consolation, guys, but this separation and diversion and diversity that might be great in Judaism has happened since ever and ever and ever. Actually, they say that Bet HaMikdash, the temple, fell apart for the war of Jews. So think about that. Is that good or not?
Good point. Another good point. David.
One thing that I would like to add is that there may be one day a leader of the Jewish people in the United States, and that person may, on one golden morning, see him inaugurated as the first president of the United States, with his mom and dad in the audience. And the mom looks to her friends during the inauguration as he's saying those words, and she says, "Do you see that man up there taking the oath of office?" And yes, 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 his brother's a doctor.
I've heard that joke before.
Yeah.
I've heard it reversed also.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I think we've really covered the waterfront. Next week, we'll begin with verse 15. It's a good place to start. And I want to thank everyone for a very series of lively discussions. And
thank you for leading us, Marty.
Excuse me?
Thank you for leading us.
Well, you're welcome, but you guys do the work. Okay. But no, really, each one of you brought up very, very important aspects of this discussion. And that's why I feel that we've really covered the waterfront with